Hello, and welcome to Turing Test Fiction. How good is AI-generated writing? How sure are you that you can tell the difference between stories created by a human and stories created by artificial intelligence? My name is Nigel. I'm your guide on this very strange journey. If you're new here, hit subscribe to join us as we watch machines get better at telling stories and doing the little things that we believe make us uniquely human. Do you ever feel like you've been here before? What if you have? Those were the exact words I said to introduce our last episode. And appropriately enough, tonight we have two more stories about past life detectives. Let's see if we can loosen our karmic chains a little, and while we're at it, distinguish the AI story from the human one. Our first story is called An Afternoon Meeting. A mid-aged man, simply dressed, stood under an overhang, taking shelter from the last raindrops of a brief summer downpour. With the parting of the clouds, the setting sun's fading light touched the city once more, painting it in warm orange hues. The man examined his watch. 1955. His eyes then moved to the building on the other end of the street, stopping on the road-facing window of the third apartment of the second floor. Its curtains pulled, the man could see a woman dressed in office wear sitting at a desk on the other side of it, her gaze focused on the street below, and he averted his eyes lest hers meet them. Then he took a deep breath, let it out slowly, and crossed the street, entering the building. He climbed the steps, found the right office, knocked timidly on the door. The kindly clerk welcomed him in. "Do you have an appointment?" he asked, and the man confirmed it with a name and a time. 20 o'clock. Then, finally, he entered the woman's office. "Good evening," the investigator said, smiling as she looked up from her computer to the man. "Mr. Wilson, correct? Please, take a seat. Oh, and sorry about the mess. It's been a busy work week." "Thank you," the man said, sitting at the desk. Then the investigator offered him a cup of coffee, which he graciously accepted. "A single teaspoon of sugar, please," he said, and the woman briefly turned to her computer, typing a quick message to her assistant before addressing the man again. "Done," she said. "Now, how can I help you, Mr. Wilson?" The man hesitated for a few moments before speaking. I came at the recommendation of Jane, Miss Hart, that is," he said, and the detective nodded along. "She told me that you helped her reunite with a dear friend of hers from her previous reincarnation." "Indeed," the investigator answered, smiling at the memory. "I would like your help in a similar matter, detective," the man continued, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. The investigator noticed, though she pretended not to. "Of course, Mr. Wilson," she said, observing her client closely. "Who would you like me to help you with?" "My, the man began, then closed his eyes and took a weary sigh before continuing. "My sister, Erica." The woman nodded. "I see," she said, then reached for a pen and a notebook. "I can certainly help you with that, Mr. Wilson, but I'd have to ask a few questions first, if that's all right with you." The man nodded, and the detective continued. "Your sister Erica, how much of her do you remember from your previous life?" I don't," the man began, then shook his head. "I mean, Erica, she's not from a previous life. She's my sister. Was, I mean." The detective remained silent for a few uncomfortable moments. Then she let the pen drop from her hands, making a surprisingly loud thud. The man flinched. The woman took note of it. Mr. Wilson, what you're asking for is frowned upon in our line of work. Of course, you're hardly the first person to come in to me with such a request, and I can refer you to a therapist that could. Why not? The man snapped, shooting up from his chair. Everyone I turned to said the same. I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson. I can't help you, Mr. Wilson. You should seek a therapist, Mr. Wilson. Well, I don't want to see a fucking therapist. I want to see my sister, he said, slamming his fist on the desk. The detective, unflinchingly, merely stared deeply into the man's eyes, leaving it to the all-powerful silence to take the wind out of him. The man seemed to shrink. Then, when he spoke again, he was pleading. It's a simple thing to ask, isn't it? Please, I have no one else to turn to. A knock on the door interrupted the scene. Please come in, the detective said as the assistant walked in, tray in hand, cups on tray. Your coffee, Mr. Wilson, he said, setting one cup on the desk. A single teaspoon of sugar. Then he set the other cup in front of the detective. Ma'am, he said, then nodded, then left, closing the door behind him. The investigator turned to the man. Please sit, Mr. Wilson. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. May I ask if you have any memories at all of your previous lives? The man shook his head. I don't see what that has to do with anything. I told you, my sister. Please listen to me, the detective said, his voice firm. Our memories of our previous lives are like a tiny, almost imperceptible thread, a thread linking us to a life that was. When our minds awaken to those memories, we may, if we so choose, follow those threads to discover what they are anchored to on the other side. These anchors can be anything, from powerful experiences to people we shared a strong bond with. Me, and others in my line of work, help with the latter kinds of connections. But, the man protested, to connect people together, you must find who they have reincarnated as, so you should still be able to find my sister. The investigator let out a sigh. I can, Mr. Wilson. Then why won't you? The man replied, desperate. I can pay you as much as you ask. The issue, Mr. Wilson, is that wherever and whoever your sister might be right now, her mind has either not awakened to the memories of her previous life, or, if it has, she has chosen not to follow the thread. That is a choice we must respect, Mr. Wilson. Your sister is now a different person, living a different life. Even if I brought the two of you in contact, it is very unlikely that she would remember you. No, no, the man began, mumbling, shaking his head. Then his eyes met the detective's. We were close, he said. We're connected. I can feel it. Please, if you bring us in contact, she'll remember everything. But that is her decision to make, Mr. Wilson. If you shared as deep a connection as you claim, then she will reach out, in this life, or the next, or the one after that. But when will that happen? The man asked pointedly, his voice betraying exasperation. It's been 22 years. I don't know. No one does. And if I die before she reaches out, then you shall meet her at the wheel's next turn. Where's the point in that? The man said, dejected. I won't remember her. You are far more than Mr. Wilson is. There's no need to worry. The soul remembers, even when the mind does not. The man shook his head. Were that true, detective, I would have memories of my past lives. The investigator sat up from her chair then, and walked over to the man. Taking his hand in hers, he smiled softly, then said, It is true, Mr. Wilson. This grief you hold within you has left its mark upon your soul. It will remember the grief, and it will remember what caused it. But you still have a life left to live, Mr. Wilson, and you have held on to your grief for far too long. Live for the living, and live for the memory of those who are gone. The departed will find their way back to you. To think that a loved one is out there somewhere, and if you could just find them, you could be together again. That is a terrible kind of hope. Sometimes hope is the curse, and sometimes the curse is memory. Now, our next story, The Echoes of Yesterday. In a world where reincarnation was as certain as the rising sun, memories lingered like shadows, weaving through lives and ages. My name is Alex Winslow, and I am a private detective. My specialty? Past life disputes. In a city where everyone carried the ghosts of their former selves, my job was to untangle the webs of history and bring peace to those haunted by the echoes of yesterday. It was a rainy Tuesday when she walked into my office. Her presence was like a flicker from an old film, something familiar and yet elusive. She introduced herself as Evelyn Hawthorne, a name that resonated with an old melody in my mind. Her eyes, deep and searching, spoke of a story she had yet to tell. "I need your help, Mr. Winslow," she began, her voice steady, but tinged with desperation. "I believe my husband is being influenced by his past life. It's changing him." I nodded, motioning for her to sit. This was not the first time I had encountered such a case. People often struggle to reconcile their present selves with the remnants of who they once were. But Evelyn's distress was palpable, and it piqued my curiosity. "Tell me more," I said, leaning forward. Evelyn took a deep breath, as if bracing herself to dive into deep waters. "His name is Samuel. We've been married for 5 years, but lately he's been different. It started with dreams, vivid ones. He'd wake up in the middle of the night, screaming about places and people he shouldn't know. Then he started speaking in a language neither of us recognized, and now he's obsessed with finding someone, a woman named Isabella." The name hit me like a jolt. Isabella. It was a common enough name, but in the context of past lives it carried weight. I had come across it in several cases before, often linked to tragic love stories that spanned centuries. "Do you have any idea who this Isabella might be?" I asked. Evelyn shook her head. "No, but he keeps saying she's in danger and that he needs to find her. It's like he's becoming someone else, someone from a past he can't fully remember." I scribbled notes, my mind already piecing together the fragments of this puzzle. "Has Samuel undergone a past life regression?" "Yes," she replied. "That's how we found out about the previous life. He was a Spanish nobleman in the 17th century. He mentioned Isabella even then, but we thought it was just a figment of his subconscious. Now, I'm not so sure." I leaned back in my chair, considering the implications. Past life influences can be powerful, especially if there are unresolved issues. It sounds like Samuel's past life is bleeding into his present. We need to find out more about this Isabella and what happened between them. Evelyn nodded, hope flickering in her eyes. "Can you help us?" I gave her a reassuring smile. "I'll do everything I can." Over the next few days, I delved into Samuel's past life. Through a combination of historical records and some insights of a past life regression specialist, we pieced together the story of Samuel's former self, Don Luis de Vega, a nobleman who lived in Seville during the Spanish Golden Age. Isabella was his lover, a woman of great beauty and intelligence. Their love, however, was doomed by the social constraints and political intrigues of their time. Isabella had been accused of witchcraft and executed, a fate that Don Luis was powerless to prevent. As I uncovered these details, it became clear that Samuel's present obsession was driven by a guilt and a desperate need for closure. The echoes of his past life were compelling him to save Isabella in a way he couldn't before. I arranged to meet Samuel at his home, hoping to confront the ghost that haunted him. When I arrived, he was in the garden, staring into the distance with a troubled expression. Evelyn stood nearby, her worry etched into her face. "Mr. Hawthorne," I greeted him. He turned, his eyes reflecting a mix of confusion and recognition. "Mr. Winslow," he replied, his voice distant. "You believe in the power of the past?" "I do," I said, stepping closer. "And I believe you are being called to resolve something from your past life." He nodded slowly. "Isabella, I couldn't save her. It's my fault she's dead." "Samuel, listen to me," I said firmly. "Isabella's death was not your fault. You were caught in forces beyond your control. But you have a chance now to make peace with your past. We need to find a way to honor her memory and let go of the guilt." Tears welled up in his eyes as he whispered, "How?" "We can hold a ceremony," I suggested, "a way to acknowledge her and release the hold she has on you. Evelyn and I will be with you every step of the way." The ceremony was simple yet profound. We gathered at a secluded spot by the river, a place that resonated with peace. Samuel spoke to Isabella, expressing his love and sorrow, and finally, his farewell. As he released the lantern into the water, a sense of calm washed over him. The past, with all its echoes and shadows, began to fade, allowing Samuel to reclaim his present life. And for me, it was another reminder of the delicate dance between past and present, a dance that I, as a detective of time, would continue to navigate. Two stories about reincarnation, love, and loss. Two stories so similar in feeling and theme, but only one was written by a flesh and blood human. Which one was it? Which story felt more real, more vivid, more complex? Many people believe that AI are just next word predictors, stochastic parrots. Did one of the stories feel like a pastiche, superficially compelling, but devoid of real meaning? If so, which one? Pause the video now and comment below with your guess. Did an afternoon meeting connect with you more? Or did the echoes of yesterday make you feel the pull of an unresolved past? We're a new channel, and your feedback, your likes, and your subscriptions really help. So please, hit the like button if you enjoyed the stories and subscribe for more human and machine comparative fiction. But now, it's time for the reveal. Are you ready? Here's the truth. An Afternoon Meeting was written by a talented human author who goes by the name of Erathon. Erathon is an excellent writer, and I highly recommend checking out the link below to see more of their short fiction. On the other hand, The Echoes of Yesterday was a product of GPT-4o, O for Omni, a system made by OpenAI. But, of course, you guessed correctly, didn't you? You could tell which story was written by a human and which was written by a machine, couldn't you? For now. This time. If you enjoyed this exploration into the differences between human narratives and machine, Please like and subscribe to join us at Turing Test Fiction. Your comments are the most important part of this whole video, so absolutely share your thoughts. Which story did you prefer? And if you guessed correctly, what gave it away? Even more interestingly, if you didn't guess correctly, why not? And if you're a writer, check the video notes for the next prompt and send your submissions to turingtestfiction@gmail.com. Your story could be the next one we unravel, with AI-generated illustrations and a companion AI-generated story to stand next to yours. So, thank you for joining us on this journey into the unknown future of narratives. Let's hope we can find our way back.